Alright, so I just wanted to make a very quick tier list of all of the DPS specs, all healers and ranged and tanks. I'll just do it separately because people only maybe like melee DPS and stuff like that. And I'm gonna start off with it already finished because I don't want to take too much time here. Alright, so starting off, I would say that Red Paladin, if you like the thematics of this class, just invest heavily because this class spec is insanely good. It is unbelievably powerful. I can clearly see that Blizzard is looking at this spec and saying, we've done something great here and we're going to continue to focus on it in that fact that it is very simple, it is very satisfying, it has incredible utility, it is very tanky, it has very good thematics, which is very important, and everyone that's picking it up, no matter what your level is, if you just started playing the game for the first time ever, if you never played MMORPGs ever, if you're a seasoned veteran, if you are a meta player, like this is just great. It's just great. You do great. There's a lot of stuff you can min max about the spec. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about it being like too simple. If you think it's too simple, uh, trust me, there's a lot of stuff you can min max about this spec. But even then, you can get so much damage out of it for just minimal brain power, and that's not an insult. Like, people have jobs, people have kids, people have work, people have other hobbies, people have other games. Some people just don't want to spend all day every day trying to master a spec or class, and some of these specs take hundreds of hours truly to master. I highly recommend. And I want to bring a little emphasis to Survival Hunter. It has always had the rap of being like super difficult back in the Legion days because it was kind of a mess, and it's not really like that any days anymore because the rotation has really just centered both single target and AoE around wildfire bombs. Currently, you really just pop all your cooldowns and then you build and spend for the most part, right? In AoE, you mainly focus on your wildfire bombs and using butchery to reduce the cooldowns and using other cooldowns to reduce the cooldown. You pop in your 30-second and 1 minute uh, damage buffs and abilities like explosive shot and death chakrams and stuff like that. There's no real specific way to do this or anything like that. You kind of just pop your big cooldowns, then your medium cooldowns, then your builder spenders. Like wildfire, in a sense, is like a builder spender, except it's a cooldown. But think about it like that, and it's really good. I mean, you have a bunch of utility that you can play around with. There's no like mandatory you have to know exactly how to use Shroud or something like that, which might be difficult for a beginner to understand. Like, where am I supposed to Shroud? What am I supposed to? Where am I supposed to go when I Shroud with the people? Like you have. It's all just like your utility for you, pretty much. And you got Faint Death, you got Bloodlust, and also hunters are much tankier than they seem. They have buffed them quite a lot. They are very tanky. They have a lot of health. Don't be discouraged from the like, oh, it's too squishy or something like that. No, no, no. It's not longer anything like that. All right, so Fury. I'm gonna also put it in easy good, but I want the caveat of saying that if you don't like super spammy specs, then I don't recommend playing this. This is very, very, very fast. You will always have, even in the beginning of the expansion, like 30% haste minimum, and you're just going up from there. And if you lose any downtime, you lose a lot of damage because a lot of the damage is based on depending on what you're playing at the moment with your talents. Most of it's spent on like spending your raise to get cooldown reduction. The more cooldown reduction you get, the more cooldowns you get, the more damage you do. And if you drop melee, if you are a bit slow, if you aren't, stuck to the mob, like you lose a lot of damage. So, but the rotation is very simple and very comfy, and it's very visually satisfying and it's very fun. So I do recommend this. Don't think about like the oh it's not meta or anything like it is. It is quite powerful, and I've seen top end players play this and do just fine. It's just that they have to have a comp around playing these kind of like Fury Warrior and Outlaw and stuff like that. But don't think about it. This is not a video for that. This is a video for people who maybe want to try and get plus tens at the end of the expansion and mainly just raid normal or heroic and just want to chill, have a good time. Frosty K. If you like the thematics of it, if you like a very simple rotation, and I don't want to be like I said, it's not trying to like sound insulting here, but it's a very simple rotation, and you're gonna have a lot of fun with it. The way Obliterate works and how you can do damage in its death and decays and just obliterating. There's really not much else to say. Remorseless Winter is pretty cool. The visuals are great. You got great utility, even though people kind of are kind of down on DK because they don't have a raid buff or something like that. I wish we had like 3 or 4 DKs in my raid because gripping all the mobs together, it'd be so great. It'd be so great if we could just grip all the mobs together. And but yeah, DK is great. Frost DK is excellent, and it's doing great. It's always like this. I want to say like B tier in the sense that it always does great damage and it has some decent utility. It just doesn't have the insane in the membrane maximum utility, hard to master. Like don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's great. And this is the take some time tier list section, and I just want to say like take some time means essentially like I said, it just takes a little bit of time to understand most of the basics before you can do really good damage. And then later on, like I think about it like you can get like 95% of the damage for half the brain power. You can get 80% of the 80% of the damage for half the brain power. You can get like 70, 60, maybe 80 for half the brain power. This one you're unfortunately getting like 50, 40% of the damage of the total maximum damage you could possibly do for like half the brain power or minimal brain power is probably better to say like minimal brain power. So you really have to focus up a lot to get this down before you can start. Okay, so take some time essentially means that it just takes a little bit of time and then you're doing like 80-90% of the damage when you understand how the spec works. Assassination is touted as the simplest and basic, but it's not really like that anymore. I would not really say this is like a super simple spec, but it's simpler than most specs, right? You just focus on your dots, but you gotta spread them. You gotta tab target. You gotta hit the right targets. Mainly thinking about Mythic Plus here, and you have some rotation. If you mess it up, you can lose a decent amount of damage. But once you understand it, you are good to go. And you're a rogue, and you have all the rogue utility, and it's very powerful. On the other end of the spectrum, Subtlety Rogue has some very simple things about it, and some highly complicated things about it. In the fact, like, you have a very simple AoE rotation, but you can do so much to make it more complicated for a little bit or sometimes even a lot of bit of damage. But for the most part, you're going to be doing great damage. And on single target, it is a little bit more complicated. That's why I kind of put it like it takes some time. Um, you're going to be looking at like a little bit of low damage for a decent amount of time. It might even be like kind of hard to master when it comes to single target, when it comes to raid and stuff like that, plus all of the utility that you want to take advantage of, it's a little bit difficult to get down. All right, so Arms is in the same boat where it's kind of simple, but there's a lot about it that if you don't do correctly, you're kind of losing a lot of damage. There are buffs to that you get from Blade Storm, so you want to be Blade Storming at the correct point in the rotation. If you're losing any amount of Mortal Strike, damage because you didn't have rage when it came off cooldown. You're losing a lot of single target damage, and sometimes even in AoE situations, you want to be mortal striking, and you got some complexities to the spec due to the new season bonus, which is a season one bonus. So, in a sense, the season one bonus doesn't force you into any playstyle. So you kind of have to pick up the playstyle that is the best, and that playstyle involves more buttons, more thinking, more buffs, and stuff like that. There are talent builds about the spec that are crazy good in AoE, but absolutely terrible in single target. And that's the kind of slam whirlwind, just spam that and spam blade storms. And I mean, there's not like a huge amount of thought when it goes into that, which is great. That's fun. You want to just like slam whirlwind and slam blade storm and just do a lot of AoE damage, but you lose a lot of single target damage. So you kind of want to balance that. Like I said, the the core of the spec is just go in, blade storm, whirlwind, pop all your short cooldowns, sweeping strikes, all that good stuff, overpower, and you should be doing like 70, maybe 80% of the damage. But there's a lot you can master about this spec and get a little bit of good damage out of it in like learning in the first month or so. All right, uh, this video is going on for way too long here. Okay, hard to master. That's what exactly what it is. Very hard to master, in my opinion. There's a lot of things about these specs that are just difficult, and if you do them incorrectly, you lose a lot of damage. And the first one on the list, maybe like I feel like these are kind of equal, but maybe like this, I'll put Windwalker. Windwalker is has some stuff that the beginners and people who have not played Windwalker might not have an easy time. It has the very unique thing of its mastery makes it so that you do not want to press the same ability twice in a row. Otherwise, you will not gain the mastery damage increase on it. But don't worry too much about it. There aren't really any scenarios these days where you press Rising Sun Kick twice in a row, right? Or Fist of Fury twice in a row, or Spinning Crane. That, I mean, that's kind of the big one. Spinning Crane Kick is like the big one, but really the rotation is then just like Taiko Palm, Spinning Crane Kick, Taiko Palm, Spinning Crane Kick, Taiko Palm, Spinning Crane Kick, and then like Blackout Kick, Spinning Crane Kick. You know, it's not, you're not probably not gonna have too much difficulty with it because you need builders and spenders to, those are builders and spenders. So just build, spend instead of build, spend, build. You just cycle between them. There are some stuff about the spec that are kind of difficult to get down, and mainly the bugs and mainly the way it is kind of janky. Hopefully, for the most part, what I've looked at, it is changing in the War Within. But we're in season 4. You gotta deal with the season 4. You gotta deal with Serenity. You gotta deal with bugs. You gotta deal with the fact that you have Serenity and you have to press it every 2 minutes, even though it's 90 seconds, because you have to sync it up with your cooldowns, with your Suen, with your trinkets, and stuff like that. So just keep that in mind, right? And there's a lot to the spec. You have to be like reading it like a Yu-Gi-Oh deck or something. You have to read everything about the playstyle of this thing to get down. Okay, let's move on. Havoc, same thing. Like before the rework, they were incredibly simple and fun and good. Well, good. I mean, people were kind of complaining about the spec. It was too simple. It wasn't really satisfying anymore and stuff like that. I agree. Then they reworked it and they kind of went like just in the other direction. Now it is very complex, very difficult to get down, and there are ways that you have to. Uh, what I say is like the most difficult thing is that you have some abilities or procs where you have to do it in a correct order, otherwise you lose a lot of damage. Like the the simplest the simplest one is, man, I cannot talk today. The simplest one is the Immolation Aura into Fel Rush. If but now you have resets on Immolation Aura, and you have two charges of Immolation Aura. So if you press Immolation Aura, but it's not the correct time to Fel Rush or something like that, and then you like time goes by, you miss your time to press your immolation aura, and you press it again, your fel rush, and you press again immolation aura, and you lose the stack of fel rush. And on top of that, you got momentum, which is now kind of inertia and stuff like that, but it's kind of the same thing still. You got resets, and on top of that, like one of the hardest things about this thing is that you have to be using your mobility to be doing damage, and that changes everything, because then you have to both be thinking about doing maximum damage and looking at the ground, seeing where your character's gonna be flying. Because if you're gonna fly into a swirly and die, then it's not fun. And on top of that, there's a bunch of complexities about the spec that just make it very difficult these days. There is a simple talent build, and I'm thinking about maybe picking up like the most hardest specs and trying to make like a simple talent build that will get you the most amount of damage for at least amount of brain power. And I know about one about Havoc, and yeah, I might try that. Okay. All right, so Unholy is here mainly because it's a bit janky, it's a bit wonky, it's a bit strange, but it's for the most part is a bit simple. Maybe like take some time, but the hard to master part about it is that you have to understand the dungeon, you have to understand the fight perfectly, you have to pop your cooldowns at the correct moment. You got big cooldowns like not Apocalypse, Army of the Dead. Yeah, I keep thinking Apocalypse, Army of the Dead, and how that interacts with power infusion and stuff like that. And also, you really want the tank to be pulling absolutely gigantic for you to be doing insanely great damage. But the thing about pulling gigantic is that the reason most tanks don't pull gigantic is two. One is that they might not survive it, or well, and a subsection of this number one is that all other people might not survive it, and the second one is you're not gonna be coordinated enough to CC all the mobs that you are pulling, because they're all casting some uh, important ability that has to be stopped, otherwise it just wipes the entire group. So it's a bit difficult if you're running some crazy comp of like the Vengeance Demon Hunter stuff and Resto Druid that just like can pump out insane healing. Then I mean, like Unholy is gonna have an absolutely insane amount of fun time, right? So just keep that in mind. You're not going to be having a lot of fun if the tank is pulling 4 or 5 mobs at a time, which is kind of the way Blizzard kind of wants the dungeons to be designed. They don't want you to be pulling gigantic like 5 mob packs together and stuff like that, because it gets very difficult. But the thematics of this spec and all that stuff is absolutely great, and it does great damage, especially on bosses and stuff like that. And yeah, just keep that in mind. I mean, there might be some build that mainly focuses more on 5 target cleave kind of build instead of this going for maximum damage, quadra damage scaling something. Anyways, enhancement is just absolutely crazy. I mean, it does insanely good damage. Its rework is a little bit old at this point, but it's definitely a successful rework in that it put enhancement finally on the map. For a long time, absolutely, unfortunately, kind of like I don't want to say meme spec, but that's the like quickest way to explain what it was before in the Legion times, in the BFA times, and stuff like that. But now it is absolutely crazy damage. It's got crazy funnel damage, which is where if there are more AoE mobs, the more damage you do to one single target, so you can like absolutely shred down one mob while doing AoE, but funneling all of that damage like a funnel into that one target, and having it die super quick because it has some important mechanics that you want to get rid of is good, because then you can pull more and stuff like that. But the thing about this spec is like this is almost the ultimate of if you don't press things in the right order, you're gonna lose massive amounts of damage. And the problem with that is there are procs where if those procs proc, then you have to change the way you're casting at the moment, using your spells, using your abilities to accommodate those procs, and there are like three, four, five of them, procs and abilities, and all this is on cooldown. Like you're thinking all the time, constantly. And on top of that, you got really great utility that you really want to take full advantage of, like store Earth Elemental in lower keys, and you got your AoE stun, which is something you have to pop beforehand because you can't just press it and stuff gets stunned. You have to use the totem beforehand and then stuff stun stuff. And you got your Bloodlust, you got your Reincarnate, you got a pretty strong defensive, but you ain't only got one. That's the problem. You only got one, and you got off healing, and you got like it's so great if you just want to play something and never switch from anything again because you want to get this down, and it's gonna take multiple hundreds of hours. Honestly, yeah, and enhancement. All of these are great for that. But all of these are great for everything. But it's just like, do you want to spend like, is World of Warcraft your only game? I would recommend these specs. If World of Warcraft is not, like, if you just like raid log and you want to do some fun keys, then like Rat's great. I think these are great. I think these are decent, but it takes a little time, you know. And the last two, I want to go over a little bit more about them. All right, so this one is just, in my opinion, the hardest, most difficult, most complex. Maybe they're a little bit on the same level, but like this one is absolutely crazy because on top of that, it has super fast casting abilities at all times, and it gets even faster. And you got all these cooldown reductions, and then you got procs, and then you got RNG, roll the bones type of mechanics where you roll the bones and you get this, and if that is this, then you have to change a lot about the way you're playing, or it's it's crazy. But man, is it the most, like, I've seen, like there are not a lot of top end players that play this spec, even though it's so really really amazingly good, because it just, like, you just can't swap to this spec as a meta person, like a person who keeps swapping to meta specs. If Outlaw is meta, then rogues are usually angry because, like, Outlaw is just so completely different from the other rogues, and it's just so much more difficult. And there, I don't even think there might be like a simple talent build about Outlaw that you can play. I haven't really checked it out too much, but I know for a fact that this pack is very difficult, very hard to get down. But man, is it satisfying once you are just absolutely crazy. Any scenario, single target, 2, 5 target, 10 target, like it, everything changes about the playstyle. If there are important mobs in the mob pack that you have to take care of, and you got your shrouds, you got your vanishes, you got everything. Like, it's great, powerful. And then I want to get to this. Uh, this is still kind of over here, but I just wanted to put it over here to kind of explain Noob Trap, and also to just, this is kind of a bit of a Noob Trap. And Noob Trap, if you don't know, if you haven't heard that or something like that, it essentially just means that noobs look at this one and say, like, oh, I want to play this. This is like a cute kitty cat. I want to play that. That's fun. And then they play it and like, oh my god, this is way too difficult. I'm not doing any damage. I can't do anything. I am dying all the time. It's like, uh, it's not it's not what you think, right? One of the biggest noob traps, in my opinion, is BM Hunter, but I'll get to that later. Feral Druid, holy moly, it is absolutely very difficult. There is a talent build where you are doing very simple rotation. It's mostly just like in AoE, you just swipe, you don't even press trash, you just swipe, and then you just Primal Wrath. And in single target situation, it's just Shred and Ferocious Bite and Rip and Rake. Oh, sorry, yeah, exactly. Like, you just put your Rake dots up, and then you put your Rip. I mean, yeah, I can maybe make a little bit of a guide about it, but it's much more difficult than that because it's one of the last, if not it is the last spec in the game that has snapshot dots. So it increases the damage of the dot's duration, of the dot during its entire duration. Instead of it being like nowadays, where if you gain a 10% damage buff, each time that buff is up and something happens, like you get a dot tick, then that dot tick gets 10% increased damage. Once the 10% increased damage buff drops off, if the dot ticks, it does not do increased 10% damage. But Feral has two buffs. Your stealth slash incarnation, which buffs your rake's damage by a lot for its full duration. And then you got Tiger's Fury, which increases all of your damage. Baseline, I think it's 10 or 15% for its full duration. So if you are refreshing your dots, you are losing damage. You want to be using this correctly and thinking about it all the time. And in AoE situations where most specs just go crazy pressing one or two buttons and just having a good time, you've got like Feral Druid over here doing math in its head, like, oh, should I press this? Should I focus on this one? Should I pop this? I don't know. Like, is this good? Like, does this thing have the correct dot on it? Like, does this thing have the correct buffed dot on it, or something like that? You know. So maybe it's a bit of a noob trap. I mean, people know, if people know about the game, then they kind of know that Feral is known for being difficult. But if they're just new to the game and they see a cute kitty cat and they want to play that, I maybe if you really want to play that, I could make like a video that explains a more simple talent build that you can play and get a decent amount of damage out of it. But you do lose a lot of potential damage out of it, but you can still do great damage, right? So, okay, that's the tier list. I want to go into ranged and healers and tanks next, but I need a bit of a break because I do not understand how these YouTubers talk this much. I am absolutely exhausted, and it is 6 in the morning for me. I just woke up and I'm good to go, but man, my voice. I don't know how they do this, man. If you're watching right now, holy moly, man, thank you. And if you can comment on what you would like to see, I would like to know because I've been playing this game for a very long time, but I still try and keep in mind the new beginners and the people who maybe want to get a little bit better at the game because like they're maybe in like a guild where there is a normal heroic guild. It's not really required for them to be doing like insane damage, but they really want to like put in the work, just a little bit of work at least to get a lot of damage out of it, their spec, because they feel like, oh man, like I feel like I'm dragging behind. I feel like I'm kind of useless in the raid because I see all these other people doing great damage. I'm the same item level as them, and I'm just not doing anything, right? I want to help those people specifically because there is a lot you can do, and you don't have to spend a lot of time on it. Like you don't have to be playing this game 10 hours a day to understand this. All right, so yeah, please comment if you want to see something like that. If you see something, then I'm not gonna ask for anything else because I hate those reminders. But I do have to tell you, like, to comment if you wanna, if you wanna, if I need to know, I need to know what you want to see. So you have to tell me, unfortunately. So do that. Thank you. See ya.